Have you ever noticed how someone can go from being completely involved in your life to acting like you don't even exist? One day they're calling you, laughing with you, making plans, and then suddenly it's like a switch flips. No calls, no replies, just cold, empty silence. And you're left alone with your thoughts, sitting in that silence, questioning everything. What happened? Was it something I said? Something I did? Did I miss the signs? It's a jarring experience. Because when someone pulls away without warning, it doesn't just feel confusing, it feels personal. You begin to wonder if you've become invisible. And in that moment of uncertainty, it's easy to fall into self-doubt, to overthink, to take it all on your shoulders. But here's something no one tells you at first: the sudden silence you're experiencing. It's almost never about what you did wrong. It's about a choice, a decision they made, one they won't announce, explain, or take accountability for. They don't owe you a conversation. They don't want to have one. So instead of closure, you're left with confusion. Instead of answers, you get echoes. But don't mistake the silence for your fault, because most of the time it's a reflection of them, not you. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes your armor. Stoicism teaches us not to waste our energy trying to control the actions of others, but to master how we respond to them. And when someone starts ignoring you, it's one of the hardest moments to apply that wisdom, but also one of the most important. Because the truth is, people distance themselves for reasons that go far deeper than you might think. Some leave because they've already gotten what they wanted from you: your support, your kindness, your energy. And now, with nothing left to take, they fade. Others walk away not because you changed in a bad way, but because your growth made them uncomfortable. You began to evolve, and instead of growing with you, they chose to retreat into their comfort zone. And then there are some who were never really invested to begin with. They were there for the benefits, not the bond. So what do you do when someone you cared about starts ignoring you? The common reaction is to chase, to over-explain, to try and fix something you don't even fully understand. But that reaction only deepens the wound, because now you're fighting for clarity in a conversation they've already walked away from. The truth is, you don't need to beg for answers, force closure, or shrink yourself to stay in anyone's life. The greatest form of power is emotional self-control, the strength to stay rooted in who you are, even when others choose to walk away. When you stop taking silence personally, you begin to reclaim your peace, because being ignored isn't always rejection, it's often redirection. A quiet signal that someone has completed their part in your story, and when you stop trying to reopen doors that have already closed, you free yourself to walk through better ones. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly why people suddenly begin ignoring you and what it really means. You'll learn how to recognize the hidden motives behind their silence, how to respond in a way that protects your self-worth, and how to use these moments of distance not as setbacks, but as fuel for your growth. Because every reason we'll uncover is tied to something deeper. And once you see it clearly, you'll never feel powerless in these situations again. And to help you understand this more deeply, I want to tell you the story of Ethan. Because sometimes one honest story can reveal more than 100 explanations. Ethan was the kind of person everyone wanted around. He was kind, dependable, and always showed up when people needed him. If someone had a problem, he'd listen. If someone needed help, he was there before they even asked. And for a long time he believed that his presence truly mattered to the people in his life. But then something changed. The messages stopped. The invitations stopped. The people who once laughed with him, made plans, and leaned on him slowly pulled away. No drama, no arguments, just silence. It started with small things, late replies, missed calls. But soon it became clear that something had shifted. The warmth was gone. And Ethan, confused and hurt, couldn't stop asking himself, why? What did I do? Desperate for clarity, he turned to someone he trusted deeply, his old mentor, Mr. Harris, a retired psychologist known not for sugarcoating, but for helping people see the truth they were trying to avoid. After hearing Ethan's story, Mr. Harris didn't offer sympathy. Instead, he handed Ethan a candle and a single match. "Light it," he said. Ethan struck the match and lit the candle. The soft flame flickered in the quiet room. Then Mr. Harris pointed toward the open window. "Now hold it, near the breeze." Ethan hesitated but did what he was told. A gust of wind swept through, and just like that, the flame went out. "That," Mr. Harris said, "is exactly what's happening to you." Ethan looked at him puzzled. "I don't understand." Mr. Harris leaned back in his chair. "When your light is small, it stays protected. It doesn't attract attention. But when you start to grow, when your flame gets brighter, you begin to stir the wind. Some people can't handle your light because it reminds them of the darkness they've chosen to live in. When you were predictable, they stayed close. But now that you're evolving, they retreat. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've become something they're no longer comfortable with." That night, Ethan made a quiet decision. He stopped chasing people who disappeared. He stopped shrinking himself to stay acceptable. He stopped apologizing for becoming someone others weren't ready for. And just like that, he found peace in being ignored. Because he realized he wasn't being rejected, he was rising. People don't always ignore you because you've hurt them. They ignore you because your presence reminds them of what they refuse to face. And like a candle that burns too bright, you'll always stir the wind. But that's no reason to dim yourself. And before we begin, a small favor. If you find value in what we're sharing, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it helps this message reach more people like you. And whatever you do, don't skip around. Every section of this video contains insights that can truly reshape the way you see relationships and protect your inner calm. Let's begin. 1. They're testing your reaction. One of the most common reasons people suddenly go silent on you has nothing to do with disinterest, and everything to do with control. It's a silent game of emotional chess, and the move they've just made. It's a test. They want to know one thing: how will you react? At first, everything seemed normal. They were responsive, maybe even enthusiastic. The energy was light, the conversation flowing. But then, without warning, radio silence. No replies, no calls, no effort. And you're left in the quiet, thinking, what just happened? But that silence, that pause, it's not random. It's deliberate, because what some people are really doing in that moment is seeing how much power they have over you. They pull away, not because they're done, but because they're watching. They want to see if you'll start chasing, if you'll double text, if you'll ask, "Did I do something wrong?" They want to see you break your own boundaries just to regain their attention, and the second you do, they win. You've just told them, without saying a word, that your emotional stability depends on their presence. But here's the truth. Someone who uses silence as a strategy is not looking for connection. They're looking for control. They're not wondering how you feel. They're watching how far you'll go to stay close. This is not affection. It's manipulation dressed up as mystery. So how do you handle it? Here's where Stoic philosophy gives us the answer. He who needs least from others is the most powerful. Think about that for a second. When you don't need someone's response to feel complete, when you don't let their silence shake your sense of value, that's when you become truly untouchable. Imagine a tug of war. They drop the rope suddenly, waiting for you to pull harder. But what if you don't? What if, instead of scrambling to get them back, you just let the rope fall to the ground? The game ends. And that's exactly what you must do. The moment you stop participating in their test, they lose control. I'll tell you from personal experience. There was a time in my life when someone close to me began pulling away like this. At first I panicked. I sent the follow-up messages. I replayed conversations in my head. I even questioned my worth. But then I remembered something I'd read from Marcus Aurelius. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That quote stopped me cold, because it reminded me that the silence wasn't hurting me. The meaning I gave to the silence was. So I stopped explaining myself. I stopped texting first. I didn't reach out. I let the silence be. And do you know what happened? Days later, they came back like nothing had happened. Their tone changed, their energy shifted. But I had already shifted too. I had stepped into a stronger version of myself, the version that doesn't chase, that doesn't beg, that doesn't fear being alone. Because real strength isn't in how hard you hold on. It's in how calmly you can let go of what's not meant for you. Now, let me be clear, this doesn't mean you should be cold or closed off, or never reach out to people you care about. But there's a massive difference between connection and control. Between showing care and abandoning your dignity. Between vulnerability and desperation. So if someone is testing you by going silent, don't play along. Don't reward manipulation with more attention. The right people won't make you guess how they feel. They won't withdraw just to measure your loyalty. They won't create confusion just to feel powerful. If someone disappears just to see if you'll chase them, let them keep walking. Let your silence be the answer. Because people who play games are never worth winning. Instead, focus your energy on those who show up with consistency, not conditions. Focus on the ones who choose you without needing to test your devotion. Because those are the people who are worthy of your presence. And always remember, you don't need to earn what's real. You only need to protect your peace from what's not. 2. They no longer benefit from you. One of the most painful truths you'll ever face is this. Some people were never really attached to you. They were attached to the benefits that came with being close to you. They liked the way you listened. They leaned on your support. They enjoyed the energy, the time, the resources you gave without hesitation. You were the one they vented to at midnight, the one who helped them. Through tough times, the one who always made them feel better about themselves. And for a while it felt real, like there was a mutual connection. But then something shifted. Suddenly, the calls stopped. The enthusiasm faded. The relationship began to feel one-sided, or worse, invisible. And you're left wondering, what changed? What did I do to deserve this silence? Here's the hard truth. You didn't do anything wrong. What changed is that they stopped benefiting. They got what they wanted, and once your presence no longer served their needs, they quietly withdrew. It's a harsh reality to accept, but an important one, because it teaches you a vital Stoic lesson. Do not attach your self-worth to things or people that are temporary. Let's use an analogy. Think of yourself as a power outlet. When people need to recharge, they plug in. They draw energy from you, and that's fine, until the moment they're fully charged. Suddenly, they unplug, walk away, and don't even look back. Why? Because they were never grateful for the outlet. They were just grateful to have power when they needed it. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing it was your fault that they left, but their absence isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their mindset. People who only stay when they're gaining something aren't friends, partners, or companions. They're consumers. They're looking for what they can take, not for what they can build. And this is where Stoicism grounds us. Epictetus said, "Attach yourself to what is true, not to what is temporary." The truth is, real connection isn't based on usefulness. It's based on respect, mutual effort, shared values, and most importantly, presence, even when there's nothing to gain. I want you to think back. Is there someone in your life who always reached out when they needed advice, help, or reassurance, but vanished when you needed the same? Someone who praised you when you gave, but disappeared when you asked? That's not love. That's dependency disguised as friendship. I remember someone like that in my own life. They were always cheerful when I was available, always present when they needed something. And for a long time I didn't question it. I liked being there for them. I believed in loyalty, in showing up. But then I did a small experiment. I didn't reach out first, I didn't offer help, I simply became quiet. And do you know what happened? Nothing. Total silence. Not a single check-in. Because once I stopped providing the benefit, I became invisible. And that's when I realized, some people never saw me as a person. They saw me as a service, a convenience, a resource, and the moment the resource was no longer flowing, they moved on to the next outlet. But here's the beauty in that realization. When people walk away after they stop benefiting from you, they're doing you a favor. They're removing themselves from your life without you having to force anything. Their silence is clarity. Their absence is your freedom. So how do you handle this? First, stop chasing people who leave when you stop giving. If their presence was conditional on your usefulness, it was never a real relationship. Let them go, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. Second, pay attention to patterns. If someone is only around when they need something, take note. If your value in their life is tied to what you provide rather than who you are, set boundaries. It's not selfish, it's self-respect. And third, invest your energy in mutual connections. Real relationships are not transactional. They're not about keeping score. They're about consistency, reciprocity, and care without conditions. You don't need to keep proving your worth to people who only see your value when they're benefiting. You're not a product. You're a person. And the right people won't walk away when you stop giving. They'll stay because they value you, not just what you do. So the next time someone disappears after they no longer need you, don't take it personally. Take it as a sign. Because those who leave when they've gotten what they want were never really present to begin with. And those who stay, even when they don't need a thing from you, those are the people worth holding on to. 3. They're influenced by others. One of the most frustrating reasons people suddenly start ignoring you has nothing to do with what you said or did, and everything to do with what someone else said about you. You see, some people don't have minds of their own. They don't form opinions based on first-hand experience. Instead, they absorb whatever they hear from others. If someone whispers a rumor or throws a subtle judgment your way, they adopt it as truth, without ever giving you a chance to explain or clarify. One day, someone's warm and present. The next, they're distant, cold, and acting like a stranger. And you're sitting there asking yourself, what changed? What happened? But the real shift didn't come from you. It came from the shadows, those silent, poisonous words that were passed behind your back. And that's the most difficult part. When someone you trusted allows outside opinions to reshape how they see you, without ever having the courage to ask you directly. No questions, no conversation, just a quiet exit. It's betrayal through silence. But here's what Stoic philosophy teaches us. You are not responsible for the conclusions people come to when they never had the strength to ask for the truth. A mind that can be easily swayed is a mind that was never truly connected to you in the first place. Think of it like a leaf in the wind. A strong tree stays rooted no matter how hard the storm blows. But a loose leaf? It gets tossed around by every gust, every current, every whisper. Some people are like that. They don't anchor their thoughts in truth or experience. They float, wherever the noise takes them, and it hurts. Especially when the person who changes towards you is someone you cared about, someone you supported, someone you thought knew you better. But in their silence, they reveal a powerful truth. They were never grounded in you. They were only attached to the image others gave them. I remember someone in my life who started acting strange out of nowhere. Cold replies, avoidance, no explanation. At first I thought maybe they were going through something personal, but then through a mutual friend I found out they had been told something false about me, a story twisted out of context. Instead of asking me, they believed it, without hesitation, without checking. In that moment, I had two options. I could chase them down and beg them to hear my side, or I could let them show me exactly who they were. And I chose the second. I let them go. Why? Because someone who truly values you doesn't let third-party opinions override first-hand experience. Real relationships are built on truth and direct communication. And if someone would rather believe a rumor than ask a question, they're not showing you disrespect. They're showing you they never had the strength to stand with you in the first place. This is where Stoic calm becomes your power. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. But if no one can, I will keep going." That's the mindset. You remain open to truth, but immune to manipulation. So how do you handle people who change based on what they've heard? First, don't defend yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. If they don't have the decency to ask, they don't deserve your explanation. Let their silence be the answer to the question you never got to ask. Second, don't internalize their rejection. Their behavior says more about their character than it ever will about yours. If they can be swayed so easily, it means they were never standing that firmly beside you to begin with. And third, be grateful. Yes, grateful. When someone reveals they're that easily influenced. Because now you know. You know who's strong enough to think for themselves and who isn't. You know who's solid and who's just a leaf in the wind. In the end, you don't lose real people. You only lose illusions. And the sooner those illusions fall away, the sooner you're free to surround yourself with those who see you clearly, speak to you directly, and stand by you even when it's inconvenient. So if someone starts ignoring you because of what they heard instead of what they experienced, let them go. Not in anger, but in strength. Because truth doesn't need defenders. It only needs time. And real people. They'll always come back when they realize what they walked away from. 4. You've stopped playing by their rules. Sometimes people don't ignore you because they've lost interest. They ignore you because they've lost control. And when you begin to set boundaries, when you start speaking up, when you finally stop letting them dictate the tone, pace, and shape of the relationship, that's when the silence creeps in. Not because you hurt them, but because you've broken their rules. Rules you may not have even realized you were playing by. At first, the relationship probably felt good, maybe even close. But over time, you started noticing something strange. You were always the one compromising, always the one apologizing, always the one walking on eggshells just to keep the peace. Why? Because their affection came with invisible conditions, unspoken expectations that said, as long as you behave the way I like, I'll stay connected to you. The moment you stepped outside of that mold, they backed off. You stopped saying yes to everything. You stopped tolerating their guilt trips, their passive-aggressive behavior, their subtle attempts to control how you feel, think, and act. And once they realized they could no longer manipulate your emotions, they withdrew. Not because the relationship was broken, but because the power dynamic was. This is a tactic you'll see often. People who rely on control rarely announce it. Instead, they mask it in concern, loyalty, or just trying to help. But when you take back your autonomy, when you stop playing the part they cast you in, they get uncomfortable. And instead of adjusting, they punish you with silence. That's why Stoicism teaches that independence has a price. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And one of the hardest things to let go of is the need to explain yourself to people who never truly valued you as an equal. Imagine a puppet being held by strings. As long as the strings are attached, the puppeteer controls every movement. But what happens when the strings are cut? The puppet no longer dances. And instead of adjusting to the change, the puppeteer simply drops it and walks away. That's what it feels like when someone loses their influence over you. The connection was never about partnership. It was about control. And once that control is gone, their interest fades. I remember someone in my life who constantly tried to mold me into who they thought I should be. Every time I voiced a different opinion, they'd say I was being difficult. Every time I set a boundary, they'd call me selfish. For a long time, I gave in. I thought keeping the peace was more important than speaking my truth. But the peace I was keeping wasn't peace. It was quiet submission. And then one day I stopped explaining myself. I stopped justifying my choices. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply said no. And their response? Silence. Not a discussion. Not a confrontation, just cold distance. That's when I realized something powerful. I wasn't losing a friend. I was breaking free from a silent contract I never agreed to in the first place. So how do you handle it when someone withdraws because you've stopped playing their game? First, recognize it for what it is. This isn't abandonment. It's an escape from control. If someone only stayed close when they could manipulate you, their distance is a blessing. Second, don't return to the old version of yourself just to win them back. That version existed in survival mode. This new version, the one that stands firm, speaks honestly, and sets boundaries, is the version you've worked hard to become. And third, understand that silence is sometimes a form of resistance. Not yours, but theirs. They're not punishing you because you hurt them. They're punishing you because you stopped letting them use you. And here's the final truth. The people who truly care about you will adapt to your growth. They won't vanish the moment you become harder to control. They'll listen. They'll adjust. They'll honor your independence. Because real love, real friendship, and real respect don't require power imbalances to survive. So if someone walks away the moment you stop following their rules, let them go. Their departure isn't a sign that you've become too difficult. It's proof that you've become too strong to be controlled. And that strength, that's not something to apologize for. That's something to protect. 5. They feel intimidated by your growth. Sometimes the silence you get from others isn't about conflict. It's about comparison. Not because you said something wrong, but because your evolution reminds them that they've stayed the same. This is one of the most difficult truths to accept. Not everyone wants you to grow. And it's not because they want to see you fail. It's because watching you succeed forces them to confront the fact that they're standing still. Your ambition shines a light on their stagnation. Your transformation makes their comfort zone feel even smaller. They liked you when you were familiar, when your habits matched theirs, when your goals were manageable, when your mindset didn't challenge their own. Back then, you were easy to relate to. But now, you've started making changes. You've raised your standards. You've begun taking yourself seriously. And to someone who's still living passively, that kind of growth feels like a threat. So they pull away, not with anger, not with confrontation, but with silence. And you're left wondering, why are they ignoring me now, just when I'm finally becoming who I'm meant to be? The answer: Your presence now makes them uncomfortable, not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. You are a living reminder of the work they're avoiding, the courage they haven't shown, the dreams they've shelved. And this is where Stoicism provides a powerful lens. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When people withdraw from you as you grow, don't see it as rejection. See it as redirection. Their absence is not your obstacle, it's your confirmation that you're on the right path. Let's imagine your growth as a mountain hike. In the beginning, you and those around you are walking side by side. The terrain is flat, the pace is easy. There's laughter, connection, companionship. But then you feel a pull, an inner call to go higher. So you start climbing steeper paths. You wake up earlier, stay up later, work harder. And soon, you realize you're not walking beside them anymore. You're ahead. Not because you're better, but because you were willing to go further. And that's when you hear it. You've changed. But what they really mean is, you've outgrown me. And I don't want to admit it. I've experienced this firsthand. There was a time when I decided to level up my life. I started reading more, taking better care of myself, focusing on my goals instead of wasting time. And at first, the people around me cheered me on. But as the results started to show, something changed. The energy shifted. Jokes became backhanded. Invitations stopped coming. And suddenly, I was being ignored by people who once claimed to care. It took me a while to understand it. But eventually, I saw it clearly. They weren't mad at me. They were disappointed in themselves. And rather than rise to meet their own potential, it was easier to step away from mine. Here's the thing. Your growth will always be too loud for people who are committed to staying small. And when you start making progress, you expose two types of people, those who are inspired by you and those who are intimidated by you. The inspired ones will cheer for you, learn from you, and grow alongside you. The intimidated ones will distance themselves, diminish your efforts, or pretend they don't notice. And that's okay, because not everyone is meant to come with you to the next level. So how do you handle this kind of silent retreat? First, never shrink yourself just to stay relatable. You weren't meant to stay in the same place forever. Your growth isn't arrogance, it's evidence that you respect your potential. Second, pay attention to energy shifts. If someone starts becoming distant every time you improve, it's not a coincidence, it's a pattern, and patterns tell the truth. And finally, let people go without resentment. Their silence is not your failure, it's their decision. And sometimes letting people fall away is the only way to make room for those who are strong enough to rise with you. Remember, your life is not a group project. Your journey is your own. And while solitude may sting at first, it's far more valuable than fake support. At the end of the day, the people who truly love you won't just clap when you grow, they'll grow with you. And those who fall silent when you shine the brightest were never your true companions. They were shadows. And shadows were never meant to walk in the light. 6. You've exposed their true nature. Sometimes people don't walk away because you changed. They walk away because you finally saw them clearly. You didn't become cold. You didn't become arrogant. What really happened is that you stopped tolerating things you used to excuse. You started asking questions, setting boundaries, speaking up instead of staying quiet. And when you did, the mask slipped. The dynamic shifted, and suddenly their silence spoke louder than any argument ever could. Some people rely on deception to stay in your life. Not necessarily lies in the obvious sense, but half-truths, emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, and convenience-based loyalty. As long as you were too trusting, too kind, or too busy to notice, the relationship seemed fine. But the moment you began paying attention, they became uncomfortable. The moment you questioned their motives or refused to play along, they distanced themselves. Not because they were hurt, but because they were exposed. And that's something most people won't admit. They don't leave because you're toxic. They leave because they can no longer control the narrative. This is exactly where Stoic wisdom gives you power. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And bravery isn't just facing challenges. It's being willing to see things for what they truly are, even when it hurts. Even when it means realizing someone you trusted was wearing a mask all along. Think of it like walking into a dark room. At first, everything seems fine. You assume the space is clean and safe, but then someone flips on the light and suddenly you see the dust, the mess, the things that were hidden in the corners. You didn't create the mess, you just revealed it. And now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. That's exactly what happens when you expose someone's true nature. It's not that you became negative, it's that you turned on the light. I remember someone who used to play the victim constantly. No matter the situation, they were always the one who was wronged, always the one who deserved sympathy. And for years, I believed them. I defended them. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. Until one day their stories didn't add up. Their excuses started to sound hollow. And when I started calmly asking questions, genuinely, not aggressively, they became defensive, cold, distant. Eventually, they vanished. Not because I accused them, not because I confronted them, but simply because I stopped blindly agreeing with their version of the truth, and that was enough to make them leave. It took me a while to understand what had happened, but then I realized, the moment you no longer allow someone to manipulate you, you become useless to them. You've taken away the thing they relied on most, your ignorance, your loyalty, your silence, and without those, they can't function in your presence anymore. So how do you handle it when someone walks away after you've seen their true colors? First, don't regret waking up. Seeing the truth is painful, yes, but it's also powerful. It gives you clarity, and clarity is a gift even when it hurts. Second, resist the urge to chase them or explain yourself. If someone disappears because you asked honest questions or enforced basic respect, their exit isn't a reflection of your failure. It's proof that they were never really who you thought they were. And third, protect your peace. Once you've seen someone's real character, don't ignore the signs just to feel comfortable again. Don't dim your awareness just to bring them back into your life. What you've learned is real. And the best thing you can do is honor that insight by making better choices moving forward. Remember, not everyone who leaves your life is a loss. Some people walk away not because you drove them out, but because your strength no longer allows them to stay hidden. And while their silence may feel like punishment, it's actually a blessing. It creates space for honesty, for depth, for real connection. Things that can't exist where manipulation once lived. So let them go, not with bitterness, not with drama, but with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing. The truth didn't destroy the relationship, it just revealed it. And once something is revealed, you have a choice. Return to the illusion, or move forward in reality. Always choose the reality. Because only in truth can real peace begin. 7. It's a blessing in disguise. When someone suddenly starts ignoring you, it almost always feels like a loss. The silence stings. The absence feels personal. And your mind spins in circles trying to make sense of it. What went wrong? Was I not enough? Should I have done more? But here's the truth, the kind that doesn't feel good right away, but becomes powerful with time. Being ignored is not always a rejection. Sometimes it's protection, a silent form of redirection. And most of all, it's a filter. One that removes the people who were never truly meant to stay in your life long term. Think about it this way. When someone walks away, without warning, without closure, without a trace of concern for how it affects you, they are giving you information. They're showing you that their loyalty was conditional, their presence was fragile, and their connection was only surface deep. And as painful as that revelation may be, it's a gift. Because it spares you from pouring more of your heart into something that was never real to begin with. This is where Stoicism gives us clarity. The Stoics taught us not to fear loss, but to embrace the truth that some things and some people are not within our control. Epictetus once said, "Some things are up to us and some are not." Whether someone stays or leaves is not always your choice. But how you respond, that's always yours. When someone stops acknowledging your presence, what they're really doing is freeing up space in your life. It may not feel like it in the moment. It may feel like abandonment. But with time and wisdom, you'll see it for what it is. A quiet invitation to elevate your standards, to protect your energy, and to surround yourself with those who choose you without hesitation. Nature itself teaches us this. Look at trees in the fall. Do they mourn the leaves that drift away? Number, they let them go. Because those leaves had completed their cycle. They were part of a season, not the whole story. And in letting them fall, the tree doesn't become weaker. It becomes lighter, more prepared for growth in the seasons to come. The same is true for you. Some people are seasonal. They were meant to walk with you for a chapter, not the entire journey. And when they exit, it's not a reason to chase them. It's a reason to reflect. What did this relationship teach me? What patterns did I ignore? What version of myself did I outgrow? I remember a time when someone I considered a close friend simply stopped responding. No argument, no falling out, just a slow fade into silence. At first I took it personally. I went back through conversations, rereading messages, wondering if I had missed something. But eventually I stopped chasing closure, and I started paying attention to reality. The truth was, I had always been the one reaching out. I had always been the one keeping the friendship alive. Their silence didn't break the relationship. It revealed what had always been true. I was trying to build something with someone who was never truly invested. And once I accepted that, I found peace, because I realized I hadn't lost anything. In fact, I had gained clarity. I had learned that silence, when viewed with the right mindset, isn't something to fear. It's something to be grateful for. So how do you handle being ignored? First, change the narrative in your mind. Don't see it as proof of your inadequacy. See it as a sign of misalignment. People who are meant to be in your life will not need to disappear to prove a point. Second, resist the urge to chase. If someone's presence in your life was real, it wouldn't vanish so easily. And if it was that easy to lose, then it wasn't solid to begin with. And third, focus on the people who stay. The ones who reach out. The ones who listen, who engage, who don't make you question your value every time you interact. Those are the relationships worth nurturing. At the end of the day, being ignored isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's a reset, a quiet removal of the wrong energy so that you can grow without resistance. It's life's way of saying, you've made progress, now make room for what truly belongs. So let the silence teach you, let it strengthen you. Let it guide you toward people and paths that don't require you to beg for acknowledgement. Because when someone leaves without a word, don't mourn the loss, celebrate the truth. You didn't lose a friend, you lost an illusion. And in that space, you now have the chance to build something real. So if you've ever been ignored, abandoned, or left without explanation, don't let that silence define your worth. Let it reveal your strength. Each time someone walks away without a word, you're not being pushed down. You're being positioned for something better. You're being reminded of what's real, what's worth your energy, and what you're no longer available for. The Stoics believed that peace isn't found in changing others, it's found in mastering your own mind. And today, you've taken another step toward that power. So if this message spoke to you, if it gave you clarity, strength, or even just one moment of truth, then take a second to support this channel. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. That simple action helps spread a message that the world doesn't hear enough. That inner calm is strength, and silence is not your enemy. It's a teacher. And most importantly, don't run from the silence. Lean into it. Let it teach you. Let it clear the path. Because when the wrong people fall away, the right version of you finally has room to rise. Stay grounded, stay aware. And never forget, your value isn't up for debate.